So I am, for better or for worse, sort of continuing my mea culpa. I have completely been underestimating the relevance, power, importance, and potential of this QAnon wing of the Republican Party. I talked about this, I think it was on Tuesday or Wednesday this week, I think Tuesday. And every day I am learning more about the reality that we probably should have paid a little more attention to this to begin with. There's a new Vice article pointing out that QAnon already has 19 candidates running for Congress in 2022. David Gilbert writes that as the GOP becomes more receptive to the conspiracy theory, more of the cult's followers are running for office. With 18 months to go before the 2022 midterms, QAnon supporters are already seizing on the GOP's embrace of the conspiracy theory and throwing their hats in the ring for a seat in Congress. So far, 19 people who have publicly shown support for the QAnon conspiracy theory have declared their intention to run in House and Senate races across the country, according to a Media Matters investigation. Recall our revelation, I guess we would call it our discovery, from earlier this week, that based on new polling, 1 in 5 Americans on average, yes, more in some parts of the country than others, but 1 in 5 Americans on average believes at least one of the 3 major QAnon conspiracy theories. The one about the child pedophilia, inspired by Satan, the one about there may need to be a violent sort of a takedown of the centers of power in order to save humanity or the country or whatever. And what's the third one? The third one is, like the conspiracy of, the elites that are secretly controlling and manipulating deep state type stuff. Those are the kind of 3 major branches of QAnon conspiracies. 20% of the country believes at least one of those. And we are seeing this reflected not only in voters, but we are now seeing it reflected in candidates. Now, the logical fear would be if 20% of America believes at least one of these conspiracy theories, and you've got what will probably by November of 2022 be dozens of candidates who believe this stuff running, the 20% that believe in that stuff are going to go and vote for the candidates. And we're going to have more QAnon in the House of Representatives rather than less. I think that we would safely say right now, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a QAnon person. In some sense, Matt Gaetz is a QAnon type. I don't know what the full, is Madison Cawthorn QAnon? Is Lauren Boebert QAnon? I don't know. But when you see 19 people already running with a year and a half to go, that's not good. That's not good. The article in Vice goes on to say all but one of the candidates are running as Republicans. The single anomaly or anomaly, both are acceptable pronunciations, is Mindy Robinson running as an independent in Nevada's 3rd congressional district under the Patriot Party of Nevada banner. Like 14 others on the list, Robinson was a candidate for Congress in 2020. And like all but 2 of those, she lost. Oh, okay. This says the 2 candidates who won that are Q are Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, both up for re-election. The number of QAnon supporting candidates is likely to increase as the 2022 election approaches. In 2020, the final tally of QAnon supporters who ran was 97, according to Media Matters for America. Like many of the candidates on the list, Boebert and Greene have sought to distance themselves from the most extreme fringes of the QAnon movement, despite repeatedly displaying support for the conspiracy on social media and in video interviews. This is a real concern. Now, I don't know that we could have done that much more to stop this before now, in the sense that there was not really the sense that this would be significant. And so if you can't convince people that something's serious, how do you get them to activate against it? I don't know. But now we know it's serious, and now we know that it's real. And one of the things I'm most interested in seeing in these upcoming Trump rallies, Trump is restarting the MAGA rallies, and he's getting the old 757 tuned up and getting worked on so he can start flying into rallies. One of the things I'm curious about, aside obviously from seeing what Donald Trump's sort of emotional state is, the interviews with the supporters at these rallies. It's not an election year, 2021. It's not even a midterm election year. It's just it's a non-big election year. What is the mindset and the tone and the mood and the perspective of the people that go to a June 2021 Trump rally? And that, I think, will give us a sense of how prevalent this Q movement is within the people that are going out to support Trump. There's a real question as to, is the Q movement more of a stay home and type stuff up on the computer type group, or is it more of a go out to the rallies type group? I fear that it's the latter, and that they are going to really make their presence known and felt strongly during the 2022 campaign. And every indication now that this is far more serious than we imagined. I want to talk next about one of the real implications of this bogus Arizona audit that's taking place of absentee ballots, looking for bamboo fibers and all sorts of other stuff. The impact of the Arizona audit is not going to be Joe Biden retroactively loses Arizona. The impact of the Arizona audit is not going to be Joe Biden is removed from the White House and Trump is reinstated, to use the word that they've been throwing around for the last week or so. But there is going to be an impact from this audit. And there's a really good article in NPR about this by Miles Parks called "Experts Call It a Clown Show, but Arizona Audit is a Disinformation Blueprint." Explaining it's not an audit. It's an audit in name only, according to Matt Masterson, a former Department of Homeland Security official who helped lead the election security prep for the last election. He says it's a threat to the overall confidence of democracy, all in pursuit of continuing a narrative that we know to be a lie. This is a really important thing to understand. Maybe there are people who think the Arizona audit and the search for bamboo fibers and all of this stuff could lead to a change in the Arizona results or a change in the 2020 results overall. It's not going to. But even without achieving that, it still is achieving something that should be very scary to all of us, which is it continues to put in people's minds the idea that our elections are just a free-for-all. They don't work. When a candidate wins by millions and millions of votes, maybe they actually lost by millions and millions of votes. And it just further reinforces the idea that, hey, the election results are sort of like opinion, much the same way where you might like one flavor bubble tea and I like a different flavor, or I might think that one type of cherry ice cream is good and you might say, no, Cherry Garcia is the best one, right? It equates a position on abortion, like what's my opinion about whether abortion should or shouldn't be legal, to who won is just an opinion, and we can challenge it and we can use any mechanism that we can think of to try to challenge that. That's the crisis that Matt Masterson is pointing out here. Masterson says the strategy chosen by the Arizona Republican state Senate leaders is working as intended to undermine confidence in the outcome of last year's vote. And this is the point. Even if it doesn't overturn it, it undermines confidence in elections in general. The process is a simple exercise in how disinformation spreads and takes hold in 2021. And experts fear it presents a blueprint for other states and lawmakers to follow, one that's already showing signs of being emulated across the country. And this is the key line right here. Masterson says, now we have a playbook out there where if you don't like the results, by the way, in an election that wasn't particularly close, you claim you didn't lose. And in fact, the process itself was rigged against you. And the steps are: first, create a false reality. That's the first step. The second step is hit the airwaves, which they did very early and continue to do. The third step is use doubt to sow more doubt. And then you go into next election with people already primed to doubt whatever it is that they hear from you. That is the three-step process. And unfortunately, I don't know if these people are evil geniuses who are thinking, hey, you know what? This Arizona thing is not going to accomplish anything in terms of Arizona 2020. But this is going to seed doubt, and it'll create a pretext for people to claim any election we lose was fraudulent. I don't know that they're really evil geniuses and they're thinking in those terms, but it doesn't matter because that's the effect that it has. And so much like I said in the last segment, when we start seeing these new Trump rallies, supposedly later this month, maybe not until July, when we start seeing them, what is going to be the mood of the people in the crowd about the legitimacy of any election? Because I believe that what we're going to see here very clearly is, Trump's going to pick his favorites for 2022, and maybe a whole bunch of them are going to lose. Maybe some will win. We don't yet know. But if they lose, yes, it hurts Trump's shot at 2024 if he can't successfully be the kingmaker in 2022. But does anybody have any doubt that they're going to say, guys, listen, Democrats control the House now. Democrats control the Senate. Joe Biden controls the White House. Of course they rigged it. Of course they rigged it. So it seems to me a foregone conclusion. If they don't get what they want in 2022, they're going to say it was all fraudulent. And the stuff they're doing now, including in Arizona, is going to be used as a pretext to gin up the idea that if you don't like the results, it's totally legit now in American politics to say the results were rigged. Very scary stuff. Let me know what you think. You can find me on Twitter at @dpackman. All right, welcome back to the program. It's a great day. It's a great show today. We may even keep this one. Remember that we are mostly dependent on people who grab memberships at joinpackman.com. Today's the last day where you can take advantage of that wild Memorial Day discount. The coupon code is Memorial21, and you can use it on any membership, quite literally any membership you like, at joinpackman.com. All right, let's talk to some people. Let's hear from the people. That's really what we're here to do. You can get in touch with me via the David Pakman Show Discord, which you really should be part of anyway. I think we've got 13 or 14,000 members now on the Discord. It's completely free. I'm selling you nothing other than a good time. You can go to davidpakman.com/Discord. Let's go first today to Ford from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Ford, you are on the air.
Hey, David, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, yeah.
Hey, my question is in regards to historical statues and building names. I think it's pretty fair to say that almost every U.S. president in history has been a racist to some extent. Chomsky was talking a little bit about this the other day. We're talking a lot about renaming buildings named after particularly right-wing political figures because of their racism. But this gets kind of confusing to me because I don't understand what kind of calculus goes into like which figures are acceptable to name buildings after. Because plenty of figures that we're usually okay with, like something like Lincoln, were racist as well.
Sure.
So does it have more to do with like social progress in the context of the time that they lived, or how do we decide who it is and is not okay to name buildings after?
I don't think that there's any set rule. I mean, this is what makes it so difficult. And, you know, last week when radical Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene said, you know, I would even oppose taking down Hitler statues so that we can learn from them. And it's like, have you heard of books, Marjorie? And a bunch of German people wrote to me and they said, there are no Hitler statues to take down. We took them all down, or we prevented them from being built because it's so clearly over the line. I think with Lincoln, there's a context where Lincoln as an individual was a racist, as you described. That's not a crazy thing to say by modern standards. At the time, his views about race were probably sort of in line with the casual racism of many people, but he thought slavery had to be done away with. And that's really what he's remembered for. He's not known as someone, for example, with like a Confederate general. Why are they notable? They're notable because they fought a war to keep slavery legal. And maybe they had a black friend, to use some kind of stupid term that now is used. But what they're known for, what their legacy is, they fought a war to keep slavery legal. Abraham Lincoln, on the other hand, and by the way, I don't really care about statues anyway, so I'm just kind of going through this as a thought experiment. Abraham Lincoln, on the other hand, was likely casually racist, as you say, but he said we must end slavery and slavery should not be legal. And that's sort of his legacy. So the context of the statue is different. Does that make sense? I mean, it doesn't answer how you decide about any particular figure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It is really confusing, like you say. I guess, so what you're saying is just kind of contextualize the individual and the time period that they lived in, and then like who was driving social progress, like Lincoln was, or somebody who's against the Civil Rights Act.
Yeah.
Driving against social progress
and the thing like is that there are people now who love the Confederacy and whatever, who would disagree with my characterization about a Confederate general. They would say, no. The legacy of a Confederate general is not fighting for slavery. It's fighting for the constitutionally enshrined states' rights that this country was founded upon. And then we have an argument, right? So I think that it's tough because there's sort of very obviously over the line examples like Hitler, but then there's a lot of other ones where the Lincoln versus Confederate isn't a good example, but there are grayer areas for sure. My thing, by the way, Ford, is I have a hard time caring about statues. It's like, I'm worried about, we got to get people health care. Let's get people a living wage. Let's deal with climate. So for me, it's hard to even think super seriously about statues.
That's a good point. It feels like statues are a big focus right now because, the culture war on the right is a really big deal for them, of course. So you're going to be talking
Noam
about it more.
Chomsky said during my interview with him earlier this week, the cultural issues are a replacement for actually offering policy that helps people.
Right.
That's why they
so
push it.
The right isn't like policy focused anymore. It's more about just the culture war. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah. Thank you, David. I appreciate that. It was a wonderful phone call. And
All right.
Have a wonderful day.
Ford from Baton Rouge. Beautiful, beautiful phone call. Why don't we go next to, I don't know. Why don't we try George from Chicago? George, you're on the air.
How's my audio?
Your audio is maybe about a 6.5, 7. Not bad.
Ooh, all right. Well, David, sir, I want to ask you about.
I'm sorry, your audio just dropped to a 5.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry. I'll try again real quick, okay?
Yeah, please.
Okay, David, I heard an article in the comments that talked about rising or some of the stimulus preventing people from going into the workforce. Do you think it's a little bit too soon to say whether or not that's a good call to do that story yet?
Yeah, so I did a segment about this earlier this week and spent about 10 or 15 minutes talking about it. Here's my view on this, because I think this is really important. It's a very popular right-wing argument right now to say, because of the enhanced unemployment, people are just raking in money by not working. And so this is causing all these restaurants to be unable to hire people and blah, 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 blah. Here's the bottom line. Enhanced unemployment benefits, and I think it's September 6th, but it's, I believe, sometime in September. Once that happens, all sorts of people that right now might be choosing not to go back to work, because if they go back to work, they might make the same or a little less or whatever because of the enhanced unemployment. They're going to need to go and get jobs. They're just going to need to go and do it. Unemployment's going to end. And it's very easy to just look at a social welfare program and point to what you would consider to be the free riders or people taking advantage of it, making more off of the program than from work. But that's going to come to an end. Enhanced unemployment was hugely beneficial to the country at a macroeconomic level. And in the next 3 to 4 months, I believe this is going to resolve itself, George. As people are going to need jobs, there's going to be no more unemployment. And some businesses will have to pay more. And there's no question about it. And there is an argument to be made. In some states, if you can't get people to come and work for you, maybe you're not paying a high enough wage. It is true that dropping enhanced unemployment on top of state unemployment distorts the labor market. That's absolutely undeniable. The question is it exposing that the wages are too low? In some cases, the answer is yes. And there's not a one size fits all answer to that. Different states have different minimum wages, but I believe this will be resolved by October 15th.
Okay. Thank you. I just thought that article was a little bit too soon and it lampooned the stimulus a little bit too much.
I agree with you.
I'm going to try to give you just a real quick question.
Yeah.
I'm going to be through whether you call it fortunate or unfortunate circumstances. I'd say fortunate. In Boston, Massachusetts next week. Anything in particular you think I should see?
Have you been to the city before?
No, sir.
Okay. When I would, when I was in Boston and people would come visit me, if they had never been before, I would sort of give them a tour that includes the popular touristy area of, the Boston Common area and Newbury Street along the river between Boston and Cambridge. You definitely want to go over to Cambridge, check out Harvard Yard, check out MIT, check out that area. But then also go down to Southie and Dorchester, go to Castle Island, go to some of these other, new hip neighborhoods. What else? I don't know. I mean, that's probably already enough for a weekend.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Have a good one, David.
All right, George. Absolutely a perfect phone call. Really can't, but we're off to a great start today. Let's see if we can keep it going. Let's go next to Eduardo from Brooklyn. Is that Brooklyn, New York, of course?
It is Brooklyn, New York. How are you doing,
It's not
David?
Brooklyn Center, Minneapolis, for example. Minnesota, rather.
Well, yeah, I hope not. I think I'm in the best part of New York, I believe.
Beautiful. All right. What's on your mind today?
I just wanted to run something by you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Something I've been thinking about. I've been following a lot of the the people recounting the votes and everything. And obviously nobody's found anything incriminating or whatever.
Mhm.
But do you think that maybe they're just looking for just a tiny little spark that would just like justify everything they're doing? And then if they do find just like one irregularity, it will just be like a blitzkrieg of attacks on everything.
Yeah, and here's the problem. Even if they find nothing, they'll just say the fraud was hidden well enough so that we haven't yet uncovered it and we need to keep going. So I would even go further than you. If they find anything at all, then of course they will say we need to redo every election in every state. There's no question about that. But even if they find nothing, they will say we have reason to believe that there is still something to uncover. We need more time. We need more money. We need more ballots to review. They don't care. And this is the problem with conspiratorial thinking. If you find evidence, it's evidence of the conspiracy. If you find no evidence, the evidence has been covered up and it's evidence of the conspiracy. Either way, they think the conspiracy is real.
It's the true definition of a catch-22, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Eduardo, I have to ask, you have the slightest accent. Where is that from? I love it.
Well, I'm originally from Rio in Brazil.
Ah.
But I grew up in the UK, in London, and I moved to New York about 10 years ago.
That's interesting. There's the slightest British hint to your accent. It's really a perfect accent, I would say.
Well, that's where I learned English, actually.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask you another question?
No, please.
Which comes from my girlfriend, because we watch your show together, and she is fascinated by, we both fascinated by languages, and you always have like a very erudite take on sort of world global views. And no, but she wanted to ask you. She can't be here unfortunately right now, but she wanted to ask you if you think that there is the way that the situation that people see in the U.S. Obviously, the U.S. is a proponent of a lot of like things that happen around the world. But do you think how other news translate the little nuances of what's happening in the U.S. In a way that sort of does it justice, or do you think that it's like they sort of put it in their own perspective
This is a great question. Right? I can only speak to this in terms of Argentina because I watch a lot of Argentinian news because I was born in Argentina, and I see how they cover things in the United States.
Same with Brazil. Yeah,
I would imagine so. I can't say that the coverage I see of the U.S. and Argentina is dishonest or inaccurate, but it definitely lacks context. So if your only exposure to what's happening in the U.S. is Argentinian news reporting about the U.S., I think you definitely don't really understand what's going on because it lacks context. And it may be unreasonable to expect. I mean, listen, when we get American news about France, it lacks context. Right. There's no doubt about it. It's not unique. But no, I think that a lot of people, if they mostly get their American news from local foreign media, they probably don't fully understand the context in which things are happening here.
But do you think that's in the grand scheme, do you think that basically is detrimental to the worldview of America? Or do you think they sort of it makes it a little lighter for them to digest?
I think if on balance, the coverage of the U.S. globally probably makes people's opinion of the U.S. worse, not better. That would be my guess.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Thanks, David. I don't
all right, my
take
friend.
More of your time, but all right, take care.
Appreciate the call. Thank you. Really, really great phone call. Why don't we keep it going? It's hard to imagine we could keep such a streak going today, but I'm really going to try. Let's go to, and I know that last time I mispronounced your name. Is it Tamisha from New York City?
Yes.
Tamisha, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Doing well.
David, do you know why I like you so much?
No, I'm shocked you do, to be honest.
No, I like you because I think of things and I see things happening, and then I go to watch a video of yours and you think exactly or similar to the way I think. So.
Okay.
But I wanted to ask you a question about I know that there's been a policy in the talks about free college.
Mm-hmm.
I know Biden was talking about community colleges being free.
Yeah.
And I know some people talk about state colleges. And when I talk to my friends about it, I say, oh, my son who's 11, by the time he goes to college, it'll be free. And when we talk about like college funds, but then they tell me that college is only free for like the really, really poor. Is that true? That it won't be like everybody has access to that?
Well, the thing that's difficult, Tamisha, is that we don't know yet, because there are proposals for full free state college regardless of income. There are proposals for means tested programs where if family income is above a certain amount, then it's not free, but below that amount, it is free. But what I will tell you is this: every proposal I've seen from any serious Democrat would be at least free community college below it won't only be for people under the federal poverty line. It won't be that. It'll be free for a significant portion of the population. The real question is, will this pass? I have no idea. We just don't know yet. For now, nothing has passed. So if it were me right now, and I don't have a kid right now to save for college, I would be operating financially under the assumption that college would not be free for them. And hey, you know what? If it ends up being free, that's great.
Well, yeah, I guess I'm being optimistic.
Yeah.
Of course, I do agree with you that you should plan for any outcome.
Yes.
But and I find like the fact that it wouldn't be like the income part of it bothers me only a little bit, because most people, even if you have a decent salary, you still fall under. You're still not necessarily rich.
Of course.
When even if you have a decent salary, and those people still tend to be forgotten.
No doubt. And this was an issue sometimes, with Obamacare in many states, the way that the subsidies are set. There's I don't remember what state it was, but there's states where the subsidies, if you're a self-employed person and you have to go and buy a plan on the healthcare market, you get a really big subsidy if you earn under $10,000 a year, and a smaller subsidy between 10 and 20, and a smaller subsidy between 20 and 30. But like by the time you get to $48,000 a year, the subsidy ends. So basically, if you earn $48,000 a year, $88,000 a year, or $888,000 a year, everybody gets no subsidy once you get to 48. That seems terrible. It's that middle that really gets squeezed in that situation. And so something to be aware of, and let's hope that it doesn't happen if indeed there's a college funding plan put together.
Yes, hopefully.
Yeah.
And one more thing. I know you talked about this a week or so ago, 2 weeks maybe, about the mayor in Chicago, I think it was, where she was saying that she would only
be interviewed by non-white journalists.
Yeah, and like I agree with you where I feel like if you are calling out discrimination by using discrimination, then that's not only hypocritical, but it defeats the purpose.
Yes.
But I also, from another perspective, I think I'm only guessing. I can't speak for her, but I'm thinking that since the history of blacks in this country is where we're seen as less than, we're seen as not human. We were in the past, or we're seen as stupid, lazy. Like those are some of the stereotypes. I think that what she was trying to do, or what maybe she's trying to do, is say I'm trying to even the playing field and give us an upper hand where we don't always upper hand.
Yeah, and to clarify on that, Tamisha, for people who don't know, Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot said that around, I don't remember if it was just like around Memorial Day or what it was, she said that she was only going to be interviewed by non-white journalists for this short period of time, and interview requests by white journalists would be rejected. Now, what I said at the time was, if this is just a policy, this is just racism. I'm against it completely. However, if it had been presented as, hey, you know what? This is a city, the city of Chicago, which has a huge non-white population, and yet most of the interviews with elected officials that show up in the newspapers are with white journalists. So for this 1 week, I am going to prioritize being interviewed by journalists of color. Great. Beautiful. However, the way that it was said was, I will be rejecting interview requests from white journalists and what. I just think it was completely improperly framed. And I agree with you that there's a right way to do this and there's a wrong way to do this.
Yeah, and that's basically what it is, trying to figure out the right way.
Yeah.
give us an even playing field, because most of the time what Black people are asking for is equality, not necessarily a handout or
Right.
free ticket. It's just to even the playing field.
I'm with you.
But
I'm with you.
that's not really always the right way to do it. I agree with you.
All right, Tamisha, always great to hear from you.
Thank you.
All right, there is Tamisha. Let's take a quick break. If you're holding, don't hang up. We're going to try to keep the streak of perfect phone calls going right after this short break. All right, welcome back. Let's go back to the phones. They're not really phones anymore. They're really internet tubes. davidpakman.com/discord is where you can find it. Let's go first to Shaylin from DC. Is that Washington, DC?
Hey, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hey, yeah, so I had a quick question about the recent comments from General Flynn and Donald Trump with the them basically saying like, oh, I support a coup and all that.
Yeah.
How do you think this is going to play out for elections in the next couple years, seeing like January 6th was a thing, and I guess just like election integrity being a huge thing on the ballot? Like, how do you think this is going to play out for Democrats in the coming years?
Well, I think that it's hard to say in the coming years because there's so many variables. But at this point, Republicans aren't even pretending to care about election integrity or the rule of law. All they care about is what laws can we pass or what laws can we ignore so that we win. And with the news that Donald Trump now is telling people he thinks he'll be reinstated as president by August, Michael Flynn saying we should do a coup like in Myanmar, or Myanmar, as the person in the audience called it when they asked the question. What really is going to shape the future of, I mean, like right now I'm mostly thinking about 2022, and 2022 will influence 2024. It's what do they actually pass in terms of voter suppression and election suppression law? And they're trying to do a lot of stuff in a whole bunch of different states. Does Trump starting up his rallies again, which we learned he's going to do in order to probably support the people he likes for 2022, does it inspire more Republicans to get out and vote, or does it inspire more Democrats to go out and prevent another resurgence of Trumpian insanity? But in the background of all this, my fear is that this is going to inspire more violence. And at this point, it's not hypothetical. I mean, we know that they can be inspired to violence because we look at January 6th. So when I see them talking about a coup and Trump talking about being reinstated, I worry about more of the same. And I think it's a real scary time right now.
Awesome. Thanks for the answer.
All right. Thanks, Shaylin. Very good. Sounds like you're getting a message there, so I'm going to let you go. Let's go next to, I don't know. We've been so in the U.S. today. Let's try Peter from Dublin. Peter, you're on the air.
Hi, David. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Pleasure.
American politics is a bit of a guilty pleasure for me, I suppose.
Wow.
Maybe because I used to be a fan of that classic fantasy series, The West Wing, many years ago.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that I really, really enjoy listening to your balanced, well-informed commentary about politics. So thanks for that. So that was my general comment. I do have one more specific thing. So it is related to the commentary piece. So it's about Marjorie Taylor Greene, your favorite character, I'm sure. So I'm just wondering, don't you think that mainstream media are making the same mistake in relation to her that they did with Trump? And what I mean is, they give her a lot of free screen time every time she says something completely absurd or, outrageous. And we know she does that a lot. So will this not promote a dangerous character even further? Like, it seems to be already happening if you look at her fundraising figures, and, the mainstream media are none the wiser after how they promoted Trump in 2016. And like, she knows very well how trolling works. So wouldn't it be just safer to just, to not feed the troll and ignore her stupid comments instead of going to her every is another stupid thing? I know she's a member of Congress, so
right.
There is, but what do you think about that?
Here's the problem. This comes up all the time. This is an ongoing question. Here's the problem. If serious media and left-wing media ignores her, and right-wing media continues to hold her up as a hero, That is the only message that gets out. Now, you might say, well, right-wing media only talks about her because she's so triggering to normal media and left-wing media. I don't think that that's the case. I think that this is someone who, because of her personality and because of her affiliation with Trump, is popular in right-wing media. Now, is there some degree to which you're right that as she gets more media coverage, right-wing media becomes even more sycophantic about her and gives her more coverage? Yeah, probably, but they would be covering her anyway. And the problem with not addressing that there is someone in the House of Representatives who thinks masks are like the Holocaust, and I think she was one of the people with Lauren Boebert who wants guns on the House floor and all this different stuff. The problem is that if reporters ignore it and left-wing media ignores it, the ideas don't go away. It is seen increasingly by the right as legitimate to have someone like this in the House of Representatives. And I fear that it just grows. So I've just not seen any evidence that ignoring it, quote, ignoring it, is really a solution to anything.
Okay, and do you think that she's doing that on purpose? Like, is it a marketing tactics? Because it does remind me very much of the marketing tactics of the airline Ryanair that's in the news recently because of what happened in Belarus. So
yeah,
their CEO many years ago, like every now and then he would say something completely ridiculous publicly, like that he will only introduce, one pilot to save money or offer standing tickets or something completely impossible with any regulation. And all the newspapers at the time or radio shows would pick it up and start discussing as if it was a serious thing. And every time they would say, oh, low-cost airline. So that, got embedded in people's brains. So is it possible that she's doing that on purpose so that, if, as you said, if somebody more right-wing leaning will watch, mainstream media, they will see her and it will be just, oh, look at her owning those libtards again, like, is this, do you think she's smart like this, or is it just, accidental that...
I think that it's a combination. I think to some degree she knows that there are types of things that she can say that will get her attention. A lot of it isn't good attention. I don't think she's so brilliant at it, though, that she's doing it in a way that really benefits her. I think there's a good chance she gets absolutely crushed in November of 2022, and then that's it for her. So I think that it works in getting her attention right now. Whether it will really achieve or serve some bigger purpose, I don't know. I think it actually could be disastrous for her.
David, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
All right, Shaylin from Ireland, very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Let's see. Why don't we speak next to? Oh, I don't know. There's really just it's really it's hard to pick because there's so many great people holding. How about Ryan from El Paso, Texas? Ryan, you're on the air.
Hey, David, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can, but Discord is blinging in the background. That's the only issue.
Oh, hold on. Give me 1 second.
Please.
Okay. So I'm a bit of a younger folk. I'm 13 years old, and I was just wondering how I could get a little more politically involved, because most people don't really, like, you're just a kid, you don't really understand, and I would just, like how I could sort of just get myself out there. Beautiful.
This is a great question. Getting involved at your age is an amazing thing to do. So my guess is most things you can't run for right now because you probably need to be 18, but that doesn't mean you can't help out on a campaign. So what I would say is maybe starting right in El Paso. Is there, I don't know what the system of government there is, but is there a mayoral candidate you can help? Is there a city council candidate that you can help? What about what's going on in school board? Presumably you're going to be in school for some years. What about figuring out who would you like to work with for school board? Is there school government that you could maybe get involved in? There's really a lot of options. It's just a matter of knowing where to look. Also, by the way, a lot of nonprofits that you could volunteer for at age 13, you might need a parent permission or something like that. A lot of nonprofits are working on political issues. So like if your political issue you care about is education or homelessness or whatever, you can probably find a nonprofit to volunteer with that would work on that issue. So there's really no shortage of ways to get involved right now.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you, David.
All right, Ryan, let us know if you get involved in something, okay?
Okay.
All right, Ryan from El Paso. I have to tell you, upper management written all over him from what I'm hearing. 13 years old, getting involved. I love it. All right. Why don't we go to Charlie from Ann Arbor, Michigan, I presume. Charlie from Ann Arbor, Michigan, you're on the air. Please don't break the streak of perfect phone calls, Charlie. We're on a roll here. Oh, and Charlie's gone. We couldn't do it. We almost had a perfect full session without any dropped calls, or that's really sad. Let's try Luke from Indiana. Luke from Indiana, please save us. Luke, I can hear you sort of. What's going on?
You hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, how's it going?
It's going well.
So basically what I wanted to talk about is a lot of people that don't live in rural areas don't understand truly how deep the urban-rural divide is. Like,
yeah.
With the vaccinations, we've been hanging at about 40% in Indiana for weeks now.
Right.
And it's just not going up.
Yeah, you know, I actually went to Indiana a couple of years ago, and I was in rural northern Indiana. So it was like Goshen and
oh really? I'm about an hour west of that. I'm in Valparaiso.
Okay, yeah, it was like Goshen and Shipshawana and all these little places. And spending some time there, it's like, of course all those people voted for Trump. You drive around, all you see is Amish folks, shooting ranges, and evangelical churches. If that's what you grow up around, and you're not exposed to different types of people, you're not exposed to, hey, there's a whole alternative view here of empiricism and science. Of course, abortion and guns are the most important issues, and of course, you voted for Donald Trump, even if half the stuff he says isn't not even true and sincere. So yeah, I think that a lot of people who just spend their time in cities, they don't get how it gets to this point in the rural parts of the country. And I think it would be useful for people to spend some time there and better understand how it happens, as you're pointing out.
Oh, yeah. And I think a lot of the problem, too, is a lot of the people here, like you said, they grew up in that scenario.
Yeah.
And they don't feel like anyone's trying to reach out and change their mind at all. Like,
right.
I live in one of the more, outside of Indianapolis, it's one of the more liberal places in Indiana because we have a steel mill about 40 minutes away. That's one of the biggest employers in the area.
Right.
But even that, a lot of those people voted for Trump just because they don't think that any of the Democrats are doing anything to reach out to them. They feel pretty alienated.
Right.
I think a lot of them care about economics more than anything, but
yeah,
if no one's reaching out to you, you can't expect them to change, I don't think.
Yep. I think as a great starting point, it would be great for people that are more urban on the left to spend some time in these areas to just start understanding what's going on. I appreciate you bringing that point up.
Of course.
All right, Luke from Indiana, thank you very much. An almost unblemished set of phone calls today with just one dropped call and otherwise almost perfect audio, people getting to questions. Beautiful, beautiful thing. I'm sorry I wasn't able to speak to everybody who's holding. I see about 30 other people holding. We will take calls again, and I hope to speak to you the next time. Okay, let's get into audience questions for the week. First one is, hey, David, everybody's obsessed with critical race theory, but do its critics even understand what it is? Some of them do and many of them don't. I saw one conversation with Mark Lamont Hill and I don't remember who the other guy was, where the other guy had no idea whatsoever. We covered it. The other guy had no idea whatsoever what critical race theory was. And every time Mark Lamont Hill said, okay, fine, you're against it, but what is it? The guy deflected. He clearly had no idea. I saw a different conversation that Mark Lamont Hill had with a guy from some sort of, I think it was like a center-right think tank, not one that I was super familiar with. And the guy could at least list some people who he believed were influenced by critical race theory, even though Mark Lamont Hill said those aren't really critical race theorists. And he had some more connection. Now, you could argue I disagreed with the guy or I agreed with or whatever, but there are a lot. If you're asking me about your aunt's posting stuff to Facebook about critical race theory, most people don't know what it is. And it's not an insult or an attack. Critical race theory, much like many of these theories, mostly exists in the academic world. So it's sort of expected and natural that tons of people wouldn't know very much about it. It's just become popularized through controversy, such that you have a whole bunch of people who know nothing about it who are talking about it anyway. Now, I've given my perspective before on what it is and what I think about it that is valuable and less valuable. And a whole bunch of people got mad and wrote to me, and many said, that's not really what it is, or you're sort of partially right, or whatever the case may be. I think that at a certain point, there is a sort of no true Scotsman fallacy you get to with a lot of these things. And this is really common with Jordan Peterson and his followers, actually, where anytime I would try to do a critique of something Jordan Peterson said, a significant portion of his followers wouldn't actually engage with what I say, but rather would claim that's not really the position of Jordan Peterson. You're bastardizing what Jordan Peterson said. And to some degree, this is happening on both sides with critical race theory. There are people who, when confronted with a reasonable critique of critical race theory as it applies to some aspects of society, will say, you're not being honest or you don't understand what it actually is. And then you either have a conversation about what it actually is, which sometimes goes somewhere and very often doesn't. I've seen some online live debates about it where they can't even define what it is, and it's just a worthless waste of 3 hours, and that's sad. But you also do have people on the right who reflexively oppose it in total, even as a framework for analyzing any aspect of society, while having absolutely no idea what it is. I think the best thing to do, first and foremost, is just understand the structure and let the other person tell you what it is you think they believe it says about society. So critical race theory, much like most critical theories, has its basis in Foucault, postmodernism, post-structuralism. You could argue Jean-Paul Sartre. The framework should at least generally be understood. The importance of language and the way we talk about things within such theories, you should generally have an understanding of. Its connection to economics. And again, this is where some people will go nuts. So I even hesitate to say this, but you can make the case that the type of analysis has some roots in Marxist thought. Now, it doesn't mean that to believe in critical race theory, you have to be a Marxist in a literal sense. It's just, we're talking about some of the overlaps. And most people don't know that. Even just these basics, most people do not know. The right is caricaturing critical race theory as it's the story that all whites are racist or even white supremacists. And that's the lens through which everything must be seen, period, full stop. That's an unfair caricature of critical race theory. There's plenty to criticize about critical race theory based on a real understanding of it. There's really no need to go to nonsense stuff like much of the right is doing. But to answer the question, do critics of critical race theory even understand it? If you're talking about what you're seeing posted to Twitter and Facebook and much of social media, and even what's happening on Fox News, the answer is no. The vast majority do not understand it. Next question today. David, vaccination is going really well in the United States. Vaccines for everyone who wants them. How much credit does Trump get for vaccination? Listen, he gets very little. He gets very little. And what I mean is the following. Moderna and Pfizer are companies that existed in the United States long before Trump, and they were on the forefront of medical science. Johnson & Johnson, same thing. AstraZeneca, different vaccine, same thing. So certainly Trump gets no credit whatsoever for the fact that some of the usual players were the first to get moving on vaccines that would be used. Trump gets zero credit for that. Okay, second question. Who thought up the vaccines? Well, the truth is that back in January, the virus was sequenced. When it comes to the Pfizer vaccine, Turkish immigrants to Germany are the ones who actually put together the building blocks of this vaccine. It was ultimately developed and produced by Pfizer. Trump certainly gets no credit for that. Now, what did Trump do? Well, Operation Warp Speed. What Trump did is what any president short of a true sort of genocidal psychopath who wants to prevent vaccine development would have done, which is what? Trump made funds available 4 companies that wanted to participate in Operation Warp Speed. The big manufacturers did not participate in Operation Warp Speed from a development standpoint. And then, yes, the government agreed to pre-purchase a whole bunch of vaccines so that production could start even before we knew which candidate vaccine is going to eventually be the one that's used. You can give Trump credit for that if you want. Any sane president would do that. Okay. So when we give him credit for that, what we're saying is Trump didn't go out of his way to make it more difficult to get these vaccines produced. And the reason you have to do this, and the reason this is so commonly done when you are developing a medication for an urgent health situation, is if you wait until approval to start manufacturing, you're behind. So on spec, as we call it, you start manufacturing vaccines before they are actually approved, so that if they're approved, you have a whole bunch of them ready to go. Trump allowed that to happen. He didn't get in the way of that. He can get credit for that. He acted like a normal person on that. On distribution, he gets essentially no credit. Distribution was a disaster. When Joe Biden came in, we were vaccinating 800,000 people a day. There were vaccines that were unaccounted for. There was no plan turned over to Joe Biden. It was an absolute, complete and total mess. So how much credit does Trump get? He gets very little. He, by downplaying the virus, reduced interest in people getting the vaccine. The distribution was essentially non-existent. Trump got vaccinated in January, didn't even go public with that until March, at which point 2 more months of building anti-vaccine sentiment had been allowed to fester and ferment. So Trump gets extraordinarily little credit. If you disagree with me, let me know. Hey, David, is the Republican 2022 strategy going to be merely Trump? So a lot of people are writing to me with versions of this question, which is, what are Republicans going to run on in 2022 in the midterms, where everybody in the House is up for election and a third of the Senate is up for election? What are they going to run on? Because there's no policy that they're advocating for now. It's just oppose the Democrats, obstruct the Democrats, as Noam Chomsky told us earlier this week, blow up anything you can that Democrats are going to try to do. It's not really policy, and that's absolutely right. I believe that there is no interest from the Republican Party in actually going back to policy for 2022. And as a result, the Republican Party is taking a risk that they can make the case that things are really bad under Joe Biden, and things have been bad. So what is it going to be that determines what happens in 2022? It's going to be, how is the economy doing? Have we recovered from the virus? And remember that we are just 6-7 months now from 2022. These races are going to start ramping up in January, February, etc. What does the economy look like at the time? If the economy is not so good and Republicans can blame Biden, then they have a shot at doing well in the House and maybe in the Senate as well. If there's a resurgence of the virus and Joe Biden can't get it under control, that's going to play against Democrats in 2022. But when they remove themselves from any serious policy discussion and become the party of, no, that package is too big, this package is too big, we can't afford it, Biden's bad, don't let Biden do infrastructure, don't get vaccinated, don't do, all this different stuff, you are taking a very big political risk that you will be able to say, I told you so, as you get to 2022 and say, well, you need to put us in order to fix this. Now, Donald Trump is going to come in from the top in all likelihood and start saying, these are the good Republicans that you should support. These are the bad Republicans. You don't want to support these people. And what influence he has will also determine what things look like. If Trump has lost influence and the economy's doing well, and Trump says reelect Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, and they lose, that bodes very poorly for Donald Trump and the Trumpian wing for 2024. If the economy's not so good, there's a resurgence of the virus, if inflation were to get out of control, which I don't think will happen, or whatever, and Donald Trump can come in and say, see, you need me back, and for now, here's the 50 people I'm supporting, and a bunch of them win, it reinforces Trumpian republicanism, and it probably pushes Trump to look at running in a serious way in 2024. So in 2022, you will also be up against, listen, even if Trump remains popular into November of 2022 and gets behind a bunch of candidates, they're not going to be as interesting to many of these Trump voters as Trump was himself. So there are lots of these, what we might call low propensity Trump voters who were not engaged in politics before 2016, who did get out and vote for Trump. And while they were there, they checked off whatever Trumpian Republican was running on their ballot as well. A lot of them are going to stay home in 2022 unless an urgent case for look at how terrible everything is. We've got to get AOC out. We've got to get Pelosi out, get them all out sort of thing. A lot of them are going to stay home and turnout isn't going to be great. Then the question is, do these college educated and suburban, these groups that have been shifting more and more towards Democrats, do they also stay home as there's generally lower turnout in midterms? Or do these key growing groups for Democrats get out and vote? If the Democratic emerging electorate votes and the Trump people don't because they're bored with politics, it's probably fine for Democrats in 2022. If the economy's bad and Trump weaponizes it with disinformation and weaponized propaganda and his voters get out, it could be very bad for Democrats. How does Biden do is question one. We don't know the answer yet, but 7-8 months from now, we're going to be in the heat of it. So plenty of time to discuss. Don't miss today's bonus show. It's a good one. Get instant access by becoming a member at joinpacman.com. We will see you then or otherwise on Monday.